Welcome, everyone, to the How to Get the Most Out of College podcast. There's a lot of talk about where to go to college, but not nearly enough about how to go to college. And it's the everyday decisions that drive your success. I'm your host, Elliot Felix. I've been a consultant to more than 100 colleges and universities, helping them improve their student experience. And I'm the author of How to Get the Most Out of College, where I take what I've learned about how college works and make it work for you. Going to college is complicated. The stakes are high. People thinking about how much it costs and their career prospects and who students are and what you need is changing. Luckily, colleges and universities offer lots and lots of support to help students succeed. And it might be about writing or making a presentation or analyzing data or organizing your time, managing your time, your study skills, picking your classes, using technology, all these. But unfortunately, lots of students don't take full advantage of all the supports that their school offers. And sometimes that's because you don't know about them. Sometimes it's maybe you don't feel comfortable getting help or asking for help, although that's changing. My guest today is Dustin Ramsdell, a former student success coach, a manager of student success coaches. And I'm so excited to dig into this topic with you today, Dustin. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
How'd you get started in student success coaching?
Yeah, it was kind of a happenstance sort of thing where at a point in my professional journey after graduating high school, working on campus as a residence director for 2 years, I knew I wanted something different, different kind of work in a different environment. So I was able to kind of parlay transferable skills into working as a student success coach in the online program environment. So, I was centrally located, but supporting students from afar that were all over the country. So I did that for over 2 years and really enjoyed just the day to day of that work of kind of being flexible, helping students with whatever they need, and being that motivator, encourager, and just working in a space of digital education that obviously has expanded so much now, but really just having that opportunity to be immersed in that space, working in it every day, seeing the struggles that students face and how we can work to overcome them.
So you talked about being there for students, being flexible. What are some of the ways that you were there for students? What are the kinds of things you may have helped them with or coached them on?
It could really be everything from teaching them how to use the learning management system, because when they were a student, 20 years ago, and they're coming back now, I worked in mostly a graduate student space. So, these were students who did go to college, but it could have been, the month before or, a decade or more before. So it could be just really the nuts and bolts of navigating systems everywhere to, what are resources that I can help to determine career options? What does this particular concentration mean in terms of like the skills that it teaches, or how to register, or planning out their entire degree program? So there's a lot there, and there's a lot more, and that's the idea of being adaptable to students. So maybe it is a quick phone call, maybe you're doing a massive long email thread back and forth because that's just what works better for the student, or getting on a video call, doing a screen share. So just the way that you're helping and what you're helping with, it can really vary for students, especially when you're working with what I think is now becoming the new norm of, your working adult learners, and who may be either entirely online or somewhat or mostly studying online.
So it's degree planning, it's career planning, it's navigating all the different technologies, the processes, the systems, the policies, being there for the student, which I think is so needed, especially as who students are changes. And, we are trying to support returning students, adult learners, and today's student. I would love to hear a story about how you were there for a student, or, what that coaching looks like, how that shows up.
Yeah. So in my experience, it really was the idea where, you're sometimes chasing down students about important reminders, deadlines, and things they need to do. And while on the coach side, that can sometimes be kind of painstaking and frustrating. Why isn't the student getting back to me? Why aren't they doing what I need for them to do? But having the moments where you break through, and they get the help they need, they do what they need to do, and the student really expressing that gratitude, where like they have the self-awareness where it's like, I know you've been reaching out, I'm sorry, and I've had so much stuff going on, but the fact that were looking out for me, did not give up on me, and persisted and made sure that I didn't veer off course. I mean, those are the stories where I feel like it really resonates. Like I know that there was a very specific time where that happened, where I was working with the student online for a long time about all of those things, where it could span the entire spectrum of all the things I mentioned about what you help a student with. And then what was a really great opportunity with that program, they would do immersions, and it was an opportunity for students to come together, and it was a great kind of community building thing. And, they'd have kind of this learning experience. And I get to meet that student, and I get to just like found me, saw my name tag, walked up to me, and they're like, man, I'd be like, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. Like, literally here, but also like, they were a ways through their program, approaching graduation. They were on track. They knew exactly what courses they had left and how they were going to get there. They had a program plan that was contoured to them, and they always knew they kind of had that safety net, So if they ever had questions, whether it was, I had the answer, it's something I think that's really important for coaching, where it's like we're not expecting, with all those things I mentioned, that they're necessarily the expert, but if at least they're that kind of conduit where, if no one else, if nothing else, that student knows they could go to their coach and, it could be like, well, I know this person in particular, this office is going to be better suited to serve you, or, they'll look into it, they'll get back to them and all that. It's just the responsiveness and the reliability, the consistency that a coach can offer, the student, I've connected with them on LinkedIn. So I've seen, they've graduated, they've been able to go off on amazing things. And, when we each have great milestones, it's sort of, still being that encourager, that celebrator, that person who's sort of there to kind of bear witness and kind of hopefully, in the true coaching fashion, like for any sport, it's like be on the sideline. That student's doing what they do best, but I'm always there. And I can kind of be like, hey, you might want to think about, you know, in a particular example, like with the student, it would be like, hey, maybe take these two courses together. It was like 10-week modules. That's going to be a lot better because you're going to burn out if it's too, you're going to take the stats class and the, macroeconomics class. Not going to be a good idea for it to be successful. So, it's giving a little bit of that commentary and all that. Ultimately, the students registering themselves, they're making their own choices, but I'm giving that guidance from it's like, hey, I've been around the block a few times. I work with 200 students. This is probably going to be the better way to go. And those were things that I helped that particular student with, and they were able to get through and navigate, life's changes and ups and downs and just busy seasons and stay on course. And on the spectrum of things, I saw students who fell off course because, fell off the path because they weren't being mindful of these things. And it's, by no fault of their own. And other folks who, they're like, I want to get this program done in a year, which was possible if you like super stacked the courses,
Right.
but they worked with me to do that. Like they were able to kind of do this Herculean effort by working with me and figuring out a game plan and those sort of things. So it was just always really interesting. There's kind of no shortage of, different anecdotes and things like that. But hopefully that kind of story sort of contextualizes the, very dynamic and kind of nuanced nature of often very longitudinal work that coaches are often doing with their students.
Yeah, it's great to hear all the different ways you can provide the advice and the support and how it can pay off where, you have a student saying, I wouldn't be here if not for you. And what a great feeling to have someone in your corner, to have that go-to person. If nothing else, I can talk to Dustin about how to stack my courses or how to spread them out or how to register or when to register or, how to not miss an upcoming deadline and all these things and everything in between. And understanding that no two students are alike and they need different supports, advice, inspiration, information is so important. I would love to hear, all the things you're talking about sound so helpful and so beneficial. And I know one of my favorite studies on this is the Stanford study it was a randomized controlled trial of over 10,000 students. And I think it showed working with a student success coach had a 10% or 10 percentage point increase in persistence year over year, which is pretty awesome. But, beyond the numbers, like, why is this important? Why should a student reach out and work with a success coach?
From the institution side, it's important. It shows like sort of a level of care, that there is that investment made. There's that person that's dedicated to this kind of work, because otherwise, maybe an advisor can do it, but that type of position tends to be, hyper focused on registration and keeping students, on track with their degree plan. But I've seen sort of the blurring of line where you can maybe expand the scope of that through having a success coaching program. And it allows to sort of give a, sort of a scope that includes so much of everything else that a student will go through on a more of that emotional side. So, students are busy, they're stressed, and just from my perspective, is they can use all the help that they can get from trained experts. There's just great resources to train professionals on the skills of coaching and everything. And, from a student's perspective, I think oftentimes they will make decisions in a vacuum when they can't find them or anything like that. And just knowing that, any coaching program worth its salt is going to be, again, flexible in sort of the modality that you can reach out to them, the frequency, and the types of things that they can support you on, and whether it's, again, they're helping you or they know who to go to. So it's like, don't feel as though it's like, oh, I don't know if this is for them or not. It's like, just bring it up, just ask, and they will be able to kind of absorb that and relay it towards who can ever give you the best support.
Yeah, I mean, it sort of sounds like it's so important for students to meet other students that are maybe further along in their program that have been there and done that and can talk about course sequencing and the center for this and the office for that. But it sounds like it's even better than that, right? Because that advice from your peer is kind of from the lens of their experience, which is useful, but it's not 200, it's not hundreds of other students, and there's probably not that same level of awareness of all the things that are happening at the college or the university and all those connections that you can refer people to. It's sort of like, in addition to meeting people that are further along your path, working with a coach that has worked with so many other students seems so beneficial. So how can students find a success coach? Does this happen in orientation, or how does this happen even before that? How should they get connected?
In my experience, is absolutely during those early days where you're sort of getting onboarded and understanding the campus environment and all the different resources. There should ideally be, some even just kind of group session to explain what coaching is. And then in my experience during those days of after you deposit, but before you start classes, is that high impact time for a coach to introduce themselves and schedule some opportunity to have kind of a welcome call. So do that. It's so important. Typically, those calls are more so kind of a, coach introducing themselves, how to connect with them, the coach learning about you, what you're excited about, what you're worried about, how you prefer to communicate, those sort of things. So again, the coach should be in a position where it's like, if you prefer to text, email, phone call, if you want a standing monthly appointment, if you want to come into the office to do that or do it over a video call, think through all those things and, also feel free to adjust it, like make your needs clear. If it's just like, oh, I just got a new job and I'm going to be, going back and forth or something, or I used to live on campus last year, but I'm going to be moving off campus. It actually would be easier to, do a video call versus like strolling into the office like I used to. Like, just be thinking about those things, because I think the consistency and the sort of fluidity that integrates into your life so that you can have this coach be a person that you rely on and that you communicate with, even when things are good. It's one of those things where it's like, it shouldn't only be where it's like, oh, I'm reaching out to you when things are, going crazy and chaotic and I need help. It's like, if you're sharing with them like, wow, this worked out really well, and it's just helpful to have that person be like, well, can you tell me a little bit more about, like, that time management strategy we talked about? Like, what is it exactly about that worked? Because again, like you were saying, it behooves a good coach to process those kind of things. And you might see a pattern where it's like, wow, this really is an amazing time management strategy. It works for a lot of students. And I know why it works, because sometimes people might be like, you know what, I'm fine. I don't need, these sort of things. We could be like, well, I think you should consider it because, you know, all of these reasons that I've talked with students about and why it's helpful. So, it is one of those relationships where it shouldn't just be transactional. It can be something that, again, can be that sort of like encourager, that motivator, that person who just kind of talks through things where there might be kind of like a fuzzy sort of experience where there's not one clear right answer about, like, you know, doing a group project. Like, honestly, like working as a coach, that's just something that came up because it is kind of blurry where it's like your faculty might just be like, hey, go figure it out. Like, not my problem. Or, they might intervene. It's not their sort of responsibility to necessarily like do things one way or another, but it could just be like, oh, okay, like, yes, let's talk about like interpersonal relationships in academic settings or something. Like, it's just like, we'll kind of like share a couple of strategies or something. Yeah. And again, like stuff like time management, where it's like, there's not going to be only best solution. The only way that you can manage your time is just going to be, this is something to consider and see how it works and all of that. And it would be sort of the best way to do it is like, okay, you tried this. And then on the other side, like, why didn't it work? Let's talk about why that strategy maybe wasn't best suited for you. And we can, use that to explore other options.
That's great. As we wrap up here, I would love to hear your advice on how to get the most out of the coaching relationship. And I feel like we just heard some gems about don't hold back, bring things up, about checking in regularly, about, reflecting on what's working and what isn't. What's your mental checklist for getting the most out of that partnership, that support from a success coach?
Yeah, I mean, I would just kind of bold and underline that idea. Like, think of it as a partnership. The coach is there to help you. And even if, you know, your life is busy and you maybe need to adjust things, again, the modality, the frequency of meeting, or anything like that, or what in particular you need help with, just be open about that. Be open when things are going great, when they aren't going great, and when you need to make a change. And then, that's why a coach is there, is to give that help. So I think there's just, yeah, so much value that a great coaching relationship can give, for the individual student working with their coach. And then, on that coaching side, for the sake of other students. So like, you can almost just like think of it altruistically if that helps you as a student, to being like, hey, here are great strategies that I use to, be successful in my academic life or something. I think you just need to be open, honest, and be working together on a consistent basis, to just kind of nurture sort of an ease and a comfort for a good coaching relationship as a student. And then, just always know that you have that safety net to catch you whenever things might kind of be run off course.
And it sounds like it's a way to, helps you, but it's a way to pay it forward. And your reflections on what's working and what isn't working yet can help other students too. Love that aspect. Dustin, thank you so much for your insights on student success coaching. It's a great conversation, and I think it's going to help our listeners quite a bit. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Always love talking about this stuff.
Thanks everyone for listening. Remember to subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you get your podcasts, and check out elliottfelix.com for all the episodes and the articles I've written, talks I've given, and more information about the book.